Comcast can't wait to get rid of MSNBC. And they are making sure that MSNBC gets rid of its name. As you know, we've talked about this. They're going to become MS Now, my source for news, opinion, world, lovely, rather than MSNBC. And they're getting rid of the peacock and no more colors. They've suddenly gone red, white, and blue. It's like, wow, what's happening? Well, Joe Scarborough tried to explain it. Survivor that he is, he actually sounds like he might even be on board. Of course, it's his paycheck.
We will become MS Now, which stands for my source for news, opinion, and the world. And look, Andrew, they even have a graphic up. I like it.
There it is.
Actually,
the new logo.
It looks very sporty.
Very sporty. Apparently they called him, they told him, they gave him a warning, which is a little bit better than Rachel Maddow. They did call and give her a warning, but then she spoke to Variety and she said she didn't even know how to say the name. So she clearly wasn't too happy. But insiders say she's probably going to leave, either of her own accord or because the network simply can't have this kind of liability anymore. Again, Joe's out there trying to help the Democrat Party find its future, and he's saying, hey, you got to care about everyday people, you got to care about, blue-collar workers, you can't be on and on about all this trans stuff and sports stuff and all this stuff that nobody cares about. But she's not following that line of thinking. She's got a very different kind of prescription, if you would, for all of this. Meanwhile, if you look at what Lazarus is saying, this is the guy, Mark Lazarus, who's the chief executive of this new Versant. I keep calling it Versant. It's actually Versant. But, I'm trying to give them a little panache. Anyway, the Comcast spinoff that's going to be a total disaster. I don't know, how this company possibly succeeds, because if I'm a shareholder, you think I want this? No. It's actually great for Comcast because they're preserving the better parts of the company. CNBC's decent, but let's face it, you can check all your stocks on your device. You can get honest research, not, analysts that are buying commercials on the network, right? Seriously, all these big banks buy commercials on CNBC and then they have their analysts on. So it becomes this total inside baseball game. You can get real honest to God research. Go to my company, 76 Research. We chose 76, by the way, for a reason. Get it? 1776, kind of an important time. Got a big birthday coming up, right? 250. So go to 76research.com and check out that. But this guy is saying, look, we think that it will help avoid confusion between viewers of NBC News and MSNBC. They're still going to have CNBC though. So I think this is really about something else. It's about trying to distance itself from the likes of Rachel Maddow and all the toxic nonsense that we've heard over there. Here's Donald Trump talking about it.
Then you turn to CNN, which is fake news and nobody watches it, or MSDNC, they changed, MSNBC, they changed their name now because they were so bad. But they're the worst, owned by Comcast, run by a guy named Brian Roberts, who doesn't have a clue. He's terrible manager. But they're not, I don't think, selling it. They're changing the name because they're ashamed of it, and they're disassociating it from NBC, which is also fake news. They should be ashamed of that too. But a lot of fake news. I think the news is getting better. They're learning that they have no credibility. ABC, CBS was just sold to a great person that I know very well. A great man. He actually just bought CBS, and I think he's going to do the right thing with it. NBC is run terribly by Comcast. I call it Comcast because it's a whole con.
So yeah, it's not going to fix anything, right? It really won't fix anything. They're just kind of, how shall I say, done for, in that there's a few things going on, and we've talked about this before, but the reality is this industry has changed, and it's changed massively. The fact that I can be here with you in a way that's way more cost effective, realistically, right? Granted, we deal with audio issues and camera issues from, time to time, but I don't have to have, 100 people working here. And yet that's what you've got at all these big networks. And so there's an opportunity there for people to go and seek out personalities that they like and that are transparent and forthcoming. And that's exactly what certainly I am. There's no scripts, there's no middle management, and it's a very different kind of experience. And so the MSNBCs of the world that are out there doing all this commentary, et cetera, and where they're coming stealing from every day of the week, they are going to be increasingly challenged. I don't really see how they have a future there at MS Now or whatever they're calling it. In other words, the name change is not going to matter. As for other people, will they have a future there? I mean, again, Rachel Maddow doesn't want to seem to get with the program. On the other hand, you had Joe and Mika going right down to Mar-a-Lago, right? The very next day, putting on their suit and tie. I mean, we actually saw Joe in a suit and tie after the election. That was like a miracle. Like, he never wears a suit and tie. All of a sudden, like, you can tell, oh, he knows and knew which way the wind was blowing, right? Suit and tie it was, and he went down to Mar-a-Lago to make nice with Donald Trump because lots of changes are coming. And one, I think it tells you he's a bit of a phony. Okay, fine. Two, it tells you he knows where his bread is buttered and he's not willing to perhaps take a chance on his own. And three, it just reflects the reality of the world. As for the other one, Rachel Maddow on at night, she's having a much harder time with all of it. She had this epic meltdown about Donald Trump beautifying DC and cleaning up DC and actually saying, okay, we're not going to have any more illegal thugs on the streets of DC. And somehow that's a bad thing. I mean, it's a really weird position for the Democrats to be in when suddenly you're on the side of defending crime. I mean, you want to talk about brilliant politics. That was brilliant on behalf of Donald Trump, because they're out there saying, no, it's fine. It's like everybody knows it's not fine, for goodness sakes. And yet Rachel had this total epic meltdown telling me and telling you and telling her bosses effectively she's not moving forward with the new program. And she's got no audience. Watch.
And, listen, you can narrow or widen the aperture as much as you want. You can look at the very big picture or the small local picture anywhere in the country. And we try to do as much of both of those things as we can every week here on this show. But whether you're looking at small-scale local stories or the biggest picture stories about what's happening in our country, the story is the same. And it is now an undeniable thing. We have crossed a line. We are in a place we did not want to be, but we are there. The thing we were all warning about for the last few years is not coming, it is here. We are in it. This is what it likes, it turns out. This is what it's like, right? It's August, it's a Monday, every day the sun rises and the sun sets, and there are, sports and movies, and there are new hit songs, there are scandals here and there are crimes. There's everybody's personal quotient of family drama and health worries and money worries and falling in and out of love and in and out of faith.
Ooh,
life
poetic.
Has not stopped, and none of our personal lives have stopped. But also, at the same time, life in the United States is profoundly changing, is profoundly different than it was even 6 months ago. Because we do now live in a country that has an authoritarian leader in charge. We have a consolidating dictatorship in our country.
Whoa!
And it
okay,
sounds melodramatic to say
that's
it.
what I needed you to hear. It's an authoritarian. You can tell it's Monday. It's a consolidated dictatorship. So, wow. All right. Wow. Like, she is never going to really get with the program, which has a lot of people saying, maybe she's going to be better off doing her own thing elsewhere. This is what Joy Reid decided to do, right? Or not decided. I think that the handwriting was on the wall there. They didn't want anything to do with a woman who was telling people not to visit your family at Christmas or at Thanksgiving, because if they voted for Trump, then they are a threat to democracy. I mean, forget about the republic thing. These people just talk about democracy. We were founded as a great republic, and we will continue to be a republic. Anyway, here's Joy speaking on some podcast recently, likening MSNBC to Sesame Street. It's fitting, right? No, she said it's like Sesame Street. You just need to have it. This needs to be like public TV. Are you kidding me? My gosh. I mean, they couldn't get rid of this woman fast enough.
It was not just a channel for a lot of people. It was a lifeline in a world in which every other network was either on the one hand, on the other hand, or right wing. MSNBC was like a respite for people. People believed that every single person on MSNBC was their personal friend. We were their friend in their head. We were the good liberal friend who they could talk with. We were a diverse, interesting crew. We had all kinds of people. We had gay folks, straight folks, men, women, blacks, Latinos, Asians, very few of the Asian, the small, there are not that many Asian Americans that even get these opportunities. We had like multiple Asian Americans. We had all these different people. So we were relatable, right? We were like Sesame Street to people. So when you...
You heard that, right? We were like Sesame Street. Well, here's the problem, all right? Grown adults don't need to be watching Sesame Street. Joy. No. Grown adults actually want to hear articulate, informed opinions about the news and the news itself, right? So you got to actually present the news. And you can't sugarcoat it the way you were always trying to do. I mean, at some point you lose trust. Because you guys all thought that Kamala Harris was going to win the thing. First you thought Biden. I mean, you sat there and told us with a straight face, I'm going to quote Joe Scarborough right now, this is the best Biden ever. I think not. I mean, the best Biden ever? Are you kidding me? Did you guys not see any of the incoming video? The constant flubs on his part, and don't tell me that this was something that just happened. Ooh, we got a good one here. We played it again in the shorts feed over the weekend. You guys liked this. I called it We've Come a Long Way, Baby, because you think about what we were dealing with one Joe Biden, and it was this. MSNBC just wouldn't play it. I'd forgotten about this.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
You can do that one on a loop, right? Watching it over and over again. Look, I think that they're going to have to reinvent themselves. So you're going to have to see talent leave. Because maybe Maddow would be better off joining her friend Joy on Sesame Street with their own version of Sesame Street. Because, Sesame Street's kind of going bye-bye too. All that public funding, taxpayer money no longer going to those things. It's really actually quite a phenomenon to be watching, and it's long overdue because they just got so crazy. I'm telling you, if you don't have the results and if you don't have the actual product, you need to rely on all this other stuff like pressure. For example, the pressure that the likes of Joy Reid were putting on people, saying, hey, you know what, if you voted for Trump, you're no longer my friend. You had people like breaking up marriages, breaking up friendships. No joke. And by the way, I've seen it because I have liberal friends that no longer talk to me in all seriousness. And I'm like, this is so weird because I'd talk to you. Like, we don't have to talk about politics. There's like plenty in the world to talk about. We don't have to talk about politics. But somehow this is what it became. And, they complain about the times of Hitler, et cetera. And what we had actually, I look at it from the reverse standpoint in that if you could shut an entire group of people out and try and debank them, try and unemploy them, unfriend them just because they supported somebody that you didn't, then what is that? That's like a kind of fascism in its own sense, is it not? Why can't we just all get along and enjoy our differences of opinion? Why can't we just have this diversity of thought and talk about it in a real way? Well, you can't over on MSNBC, and now that's got to change. Otherwise, I don't know how they survive. I don't know how they survive anyway. Again, getting back to just the economics of the proposal, thinking about what we can do right here, right now. Thank you. Reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that kind of stuff so that we make our way to 1 million. It's really important. We're getting there. And, the algorithm respects that. So make sure you like it. If you're tuning in right now, please make sure you subscribe and that you hit the bell. But all of this is happening at a time when I really think this network needs to reinvent itself. All of the networks need to reinvent itself. It's not just MSNBC. CNN obviously trying to do it as we led the show. They're suddenly going MAGA. They're admitting the truth on the polls. How about that? Republicans doing the best they've done in centuries. Like, you can't even find numbers like this. So it's all a really positive sign. But I'll tell you, it doesn't need to be this, it shouldn't have happened quite like this. In that if they had just been perceptive about how human beings relate to each other, they wouldn't be in this predicament, right? They really wouldn't. At some point, when you keep saying, well, what gender are you today? And you get 200 and some odd different genders, and then you get mad at somebody, you get the pregnant man emoji, for goodness sakes, on Apple. Like, at some point, enough is enough. And people are going to push back against that, including men, for goodness sakes. How did you think that was going to work out? You think there's a whole bunch of tampon Tims around there? I don't think so. All right, I just don't think so. Meanwhile, it's getting worse for these networks because Donald Trump, as we speak, is threatening to revoke the broadcast licenses of 2 networks, in particular NBC, the one that's so happy because it no longer has to deal with Rachel, well, forgive me, I'm being premature, Joy Reid, and no longer has to deal, well, it doesn't have to deal with Rachel Maddow anymore or Joe Scarborough or any of them because they're going to be spun off into Versant. But they're still not clear because you see the NBC network, they need those FCC licenses. And those go through the federal government and they go through the guy who's in charge of the FCC. His name is Brendan Carr. And he's made it very, very clear to all of these networks, they're being investigated for their DEI policies, which he considers and are believed to be, just check with the Supreme Court and Harvard University, unconstitutional. In other words, you cannot give somebody a job just because of the color of their skin. But in fact, that's what was going on. And so now, as Donald Trump considers not only what was going on the DEI front, but also what's been going on in terms of the bias itself. I mean, look, he's talking about a figure of, I think, 97% of the news being against him. I saw 92% at Media Research Center, but here's what he put out just earlier. I guess, would that be the wee hours of the morning or late last night? Anyway, this is brand new. He said, why is it that ABC and NBC fake news, 2 of the absolute worst and most biased networks anywhere in the world, aren't paying millions of dollars a year in license fees? In other words, he wants to get money for those license fees. Ka-ching, ka-ching. It's funny, guys, because he's always like, how's the government get paid? Why are taxpayers subsidizing anyone? Why shouldn't we be getting something out of it? Why aren't they paying millions of dollars in license fees? They should lose their licenses for their unfair coverage of Republicans and or conservatives, but at a minimum, they should pay up big for having the privilege of using the most valuable airwaves anywhere at any time. Crooked journalism should not be rewarded. It should be terminated. And then he went on to say, accept what is written and broadcast in the fake news. I now have the highest poll numbers I've ever had, some in the 60s and even 70s. Thank you. Make America great again. So this is a big deal. He wants to get rid of these licenses. And you know what? He could. And this is what Brendan Carr's been talking about. And this is why everybody at ABC and NBC is freaking out. At NBC, they're freaking out to the point where they are spinning off these cable entities, primarily MSNBC. Over at ABC, they've put The View, that show, under review. Under review, which Rosie O'Donnell has interpreted alongside me, it's like the one thing we'd ever agree on, as probably not coming back. The head of ABC, along with the head of Disney, which owns ABC, they've been begging these ladies to try and do different kinds of stories. Can you move to the entertainment space, for example? They're like, no, we want to stick with politics. Well, you stick with politics, and you're going to dig yourself into a very big hole, not just because it's so biased and you don't have any conservatives that have any backbone on the show, but also because, it's expensive to run that show. It's very expensive to run that show. And in this new medium, you're not able to keep up in the streaming. They can't stream on YouTube. Why can't they stream? Well, whatever the broadcast deals are that they have, they're not able to. Similar, cable's a little different. Cable actually really can't stream because they get paid by the cable companies to have that exclusive content. And so sometimes they stream on YouTube. So if you have like YouTube Premium, you'll see them. But then all of a sudden the commercial comes on and it's just these nice peaceful waves or like an elephant walking. And that's because there are no commercials for those cable networks. And the broadcast, that's a whole other thing. And so now Brendan Carr went on to Fox recently and was asked specifically about whether or not The View was really in trouble. And I want you to hear what he had to say. All of ABC, by the way, is in trouble. It's not just The View, but specifically, given that The View has been a point of contention, let's watch his response.
View now in the crosshairs of this administration?
Look, it's entirely possible that there's issues over there. I mean, again, stepping back, this broader dynamic, once President Trump has exposed these media gatekeepers and smashed this facade, there's a lot of consequences. I think the consequences of that aren't quite finished. And look, The View's got a lot of challenges there. It wasn't that long ago, I think one episode, one show alone, they had to stop, interrupt the show, and read 4 separate legal notices to try to avoid legal liability. So I'm not surprised to hear people saying that their ratings are struggling.
Well, sir, where does this end then?
Look, I think we need a course correction. You know, it's time for America's legacy broadcasters to return to promoting the public interest. And just recently, Skydance, which is looking to acquire CBS, wrote letters to the FCC committing to serious change, to trying to root out bias, to putting in place an ombudsman that would address these issues, to returning to unbiased, trustworthy journalism. That's where we have to go. And I think we're getting some wins along the way. It's trust but verify at the end of the day. You know, we're not where we need to go. But I think this legacy media really needs to reorient, or they're going to continue to run into issues like Colbert, where it just doesn't make economic sense to run a partisan circus.
You see that? Colbert was losing somewhere around 40, 50, 30 million. I don't know. The estimates were at least in the tens of millions a year. So no one was really watching, or if they were watching, I guess he was doing decently compared to other late night shows. It was costing the network too darn much. So I have a feeling that The View's kind of a similar situation, because they're paying Whoopi Goldberg a lot and Joy Behar a lot. And, I don't know when their contracts are winding down, but at least from a business perspective, you can kind of just say, hey, you know what? We've cut the cord. Investors would be happy. You're going to save that money going forward. And then you don't have that thing on the air anymore, which causes you to, 1, save money, and 2, perhaps save a little bit of political headache, because unless you get somebody on that couch, if it's a couch, I guess they sit around a table and chairs, unless you get a couple of people in there that have some backbone and are willing to push back against the likes of Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg, I don't think you're going to have a shot. And by the way, no conservative worth her salt would ever do the job, okay? Like, I've known conservatives that have done the job. Justin M., thank you so much. Good to see you here today. I've known conservatives. Meghan McCain did that. Abby did it. You know what? They did not like it one single bit, because you want to talk about a nasty environment to work in. I mean, TV's bad enough. Let me tell you, network TV, no fun. I mean, everybody's out to kill everybody all the time. You go over to The View, that's a whole different ballgame of being willing to kill, right? So great. I'm glad that you were able to catch the live too. We're a little bit later than normal, Justin, today, but I'm glad you were able to join. Reminder to everybody, please subscribe. All of this is changing. So the media is changing. NBC is nervous. ABC is nervous. CBS just did this deal. So we'll see how that all shakes out with Skydance.